Here are some thoughts about Season 8, Episode 1 of Game of Thrones. First, the episode gave a couple of hints supporting my long-held prediction that Sansa will preside over Westeros in the end, with Tyrion as her advisor. Sansa says to Tyrion that Hand of the Queen has a nice ring to it, depending on the queen. That could foreshadow Sansa being queen and Tyrion being her hand. Even better, Davos says, what if the Seven Kingdoms were ruled by a just woman and an honorable man? He's talking about Dany and Jon, but I think we'll look back on that line as hinting at Sansa and Tyrion. Okay, new topic. This episode gave me a wild tinfoil idea about Euron Greyjoy. I believe that ultimately Euron is going to switch sides and join the White Walkers. That sounds silly, but hear me out. First of all, a human has worked with the White Walkers before. Craster did it for years. Second, Yara tells Euron that he picked the losing side, and Euron replies, then I'll sail the Iron Fleet somewhere else. Well, if it looks like the White Walkers are the winning side, then Euron is just crazy enough to join them. And Yara tells Theon that she may use her ships to rescue Dany and bring her somewhere like the Iron Islands, where the dead can't go. But the dead can go to an island if Euron takes them there. Indeed, Euron tells Cersei in this episode that life is boring. Maybe that means it would be more exciting for him to try siding with the dead. My friends in the community of symbolism analyzers have also figured out that in the books, cheating at dice is a metaphor for cheating death, which means living indefinitely like the White Walkers do. In this episode, Euron talks about cheating at dice and then killing some soldiers in the Golden Company on the boat ride to Westeros. So this could be yet another clue that Euron might be headed for an alliance with the Night King. Now let's talk about Ned Umber. As you know, young Ned was impaled at the center of a spiral of limbs, and then he and the spiral were set ablaze. Everyone has worked furiously to analyze this, and many smart people have different theories. For example, Lucifer Means Lightbringer, or LML, made an amazing video saying that it shows the humans must defeat the Night King by burning down the weirwood trees. Mallory Rubin says it means that the Night King wants Jon Snow to replace him. Joe Magician says it means the Night King wants Jon and Dany's child. And my own initial reaction was that it depicted the ancient event where the Night King was created, because I believe he sacrificed a child to the trees before he himself was transformed into an ice monster. So, what's the right answer? Well, we all agree that it represents the weirwood tree where the Night King was created. And if the Night King is sending a message, as Beric Dondarrion says, then it seems reasonable to guess that he wants something from the humans. Maybe Joe Magician is right that he wants a child, perhaps Bran, or else a magic baby like the one Dany and Jon might produce. If so, that would fit with my idea that the ancient events are repeating themselves. Jon and or Dany would face the same choice that I believe the Night King faced before his transformation. Would you sacrifice a child to save the world? This would fit with several major themes in the story. One theme is the idea that the Long Night started and ended with a similar event. In the books, the Titan of Braavos blows his horn at both dusk and dawn, the beginning and ending of each night. And the name Winterfell can depict the beginning of winter. A long winter fell upon the world, as Old Nan says in the books. And Winterfell can also depict the end of winter. Winter fell, as in winter was defeated. The point is that whatever caused the long night to begin also caused it to end. If the long night began with a child sacrifice, then maybe it also ended with one. Maybe the Night King is telling humanity that he'll let them live if they give him a child. If that's the case, then I think the right answer will be for humanity to refuse and to look for a different way to survive. I believe that in George R.R. Martin's view, the natural order of things is for parents to sacrifice themselves for their children, not the other way around. Each generation should replace the one before it, but the Night King has undone that natural order. To restore it, people like Jon and Dany will have to accept death, or icy undead status, in order to save their child. At least that's one possibility. But it's not entirely satisfying, because it doesn't explain why the Night King wants a baby. A different possibility is that the Night King wants Bran Stark. In Season 2, the Warlocks in the House of the Undying used Dany to make their magic stronger. Maybe the Night King wants to travel back in time to change the past, but only Bran's magic will let him do it, so he's pursuing Bran. One way or another, I think LML is right that Bran will sacrifice himself to destroy the Night King's access to the supernatural power of the trees. So far, that's the only conclusion that we might be able to guess confidently about the Ned Umber symbolism. Now let's turn to the related topic of Jon and Dany. When they land their dragons in a remote place in the north, Dany says, "We could stay 1,000 years. No one would find us." And Jon says, "We'd be pretty old." It seems obvious that this is a reference to Jon and Dany possibly becoming ageless ice creatures like the White Walkers, or perhaps like Benjen Stark. I expect this to happen to both of them eventually. But there's something else I'd like to highlight about it. Let me read you some quotes from this episode. Number 1. Euron says to Yara, "If I kill you, who can I talk to? It gets lonely at sea." Number 2. A sex worker says to Qyburn, "You ever get lonely? I am partial to older gentlemen." Number 3. Qyburn says to Bronn, "I thought I would die poor and alone." Number 4. Cersei says to Euron, "Now I want to be alone." Number 5. Varys says, "Jon and Daenerys don't want to listen to lonely old men." In the space of 12 minutes, 5 different characters say lonely or alone, and twice that concept is linked with the word old. Jon says old a third time when talking to Dany about what would happen if they lived 1,000 years. So what's the point? Well, I see 2 possibilities. One is just that if Jon or Dany becomes an immortal ice creature, that person's immortality will be very lonely unless they have each other for companionship. But I think a more interesting possibility is that the Night King himself may be lonely. No one is older than he is, so the idea of immortal loneliness may apply to him. And if so, it's possible that he wants to make Dany into his Night Queen.